Okay, we are rolling. Champions of Champions boxing talk here. And it's the Oleksandr Usyk Tony Bellew post-fight thoughts. Now, very interesting indeed. What did I make of the action that took place tonight in the squared circle? Well, I have to say, Tony Bellew to me made a very good start. In the first 3 rounds, I'd actually given Tony, well, the first 4 rounds, I'd actually given Tony 3 of them. And Usyk just about scraping the 4th round. And of course, you can imagine, as one of the judges had Tony Bellew 3 up before the stoppage, they may have gave that round to Tony Bellew. So we could have been in a scenario where Usyk was 4 down on the cards. Now, again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. If anybody wants to know why Deontay Wilder does not fancy fighting Anthony Joshua in the UK, look at those scorecards. Tony Bellew 3 rounds up, going into the 8th. What fight were they watching, those judges? Not being funny, but Paulie Malignaggi had the fight even. Yeah, I could see it even. Maybe even. Right? That's the best you could give it. The best. I had the fight, just looking back now, I had the fight 1 round to Usyk. My brother also had Usyk 1 round up. These judges give a... What's that? I've got Usyk 1 up. My brother's got Usyk 1 up. 2 judges have Usyk 3 rounds down. That's a 4-round swing. 4 rounds is a lot. That's a lot. I know they say things are subjective, but by God, that's like looking at planet Earth and seeing Mars. That sort of distinction is that big, right? Usyk had to, with Bellew being 3 rounds up, Usyk needed the knockout because there's no way if that fight lasted to the 12th that Tony Bellew was not going to get at least 1 more round. So, this is not a dig at Tony Bellew. This is the best Tony Bellew we've ever seen. That 10 winning streak he went on, the confidence he's got, the wins over David Haye inspired him. Winning the world title at Goodison inspired him. His boxing has improved. And tonight he did something in those early rounds which is brilliant to do against the southpaw, the straight right hand, and walking the southpaw onto it. Usyk looked a little bit confused until he figured the plan out. And really, I'm not exactly sure it come down to figuring Tony Bellew out. Tony Bellew actually started to get tired, and that allowed Usyk to get closer without the fear of receiving much back as the fight went on from Tony. He become, more inactive as the fight went down the stretch, and Usyk was able to land the jab more. He was able to get to the body more. And he buzzed Tony Bellew really badly before the bell went, I think, in the 5th round. If there'd have been a few more seconds left, Tony Bellew may have been knocked out there and then. So the power, I expected the skill to overwhelm Tony Bellew. But Tony Bellew did alright with the skill set in front of him, actually. As Johnny Nelson said, Tony Bellew is an underrated boxer. Now, I believe Tony Bellew was an underrated boxer, but I didn't think he was that underrated. He did really well to be challenging one of the pound-for-pound best in terms of skill and boxing. But what impressed me about Usyk, the power. I know he can hit, but he usually clobbers people with accumulation. Tony Bellew was not letting Usyk hit him with huge regularity. If Tony Bellew could help it, he would avoid the shot. But he blinded him with a jab and then bam! With the straight left. And that was all she wrote in the 8th round. What was so difficult to keep up for Tony Bellew in that fight? And that's the word. It was a keeping up fight, this. Usyk's reflexes, his head movement, the way he moves side to side with his hip movement, all of that stuff, the yerky jerky stuff. Tony Bellew was trying to match that. Now, Tony Bellew, that is not how he fights. But Tony Bellew in the early exchanges was measuring the southpaw stance. He was following the mover. He was dancing with the dancer. But when you're not that style, when tiredness begins to creep in, which it did, you then revert back to type. And of course, most orthodox fighters can struggle with southpaws. Bellew, you could see with his coach Robert McCracken, really focused hard in training camp how to deal with the southpaw stance. But when Usyk then hit him, Tony Bellew began to tire, and then he was left more wide open because again, when you're hurt, you think you've got an orthodox fighter in there with you, because most of your career is spent fighting orthodox. When you've got a full tank and you're not buzzed, you can deal with anything. When you're hurt and tired, that's when the true you and your habits come to the fore. And Tony Bellew was starting to fight more and more like he was fighting a complete orthodox fighter, and that is what led to his downfall. No shame, as I said, but I didn't expect Usyk to take him out like that. I thought it would be a dominant breaking down performance with Tony Bellew coming on strong and Usyk basically stopping him on his feet in the 10th round and the referee calling it off. But I'm glad Usyk did finish the job, because I don't want to see controversies in boxing. Right? Usyk is not my countryman. Tony Bellew is. But still, I did not want to see controversies. So that is just some things to think about. Where is the future from here? As I said, Tony Bellew is an overachiever. It's time to retire. He will not face a better fighter than that. There's no point carrying on. You've climbed the mountain, you've been a world champion, you beat the biggest name you've ever fought in David Haye, and you lost to one of the kings of current boxing. No shame in that. On to Usyk. We know his skill set, we know what he does. I think this was an excellent experience for him tonight, having to sort of come from behind and show some character, if you will. It's a far better thing in terms of experience for Usyk, him having to come from behind and find the answers to another world-class opponent, than if he would have dominated from the first second all the way to the last. He'd have learnt nothing. But now we know he's a patient fighter. Now we know he's a fighter that will not panic if things just look as though they could be slightly going against him. We also know if you tire against this guy, you can't afford it. He can finish. He has power. As Tony Bellew says, boxing is not like other sports. You don't play boxing. Boxing is part of life. You have to live it. If you're not lively constantly throughout a fight via Usyk in whatever strategy you're going to use to try and beat him, you're in big trouble. And Tony Bellew being a cruiserweight and the other boys being a cruiserweight, they have speed to land shots on him. They have speed to avoid him for so long. But at heavyweight, the guys are a little bit slower. That may give Usyk an advantage. But here's the thing. Anthony Joshua could beat Usyk in one punch. He could be losing 11 rounds straight. And then AJ lands that haymaker and it's all over. I don't think Usyk could take Joshua out with one shot as he did with two shots in Tony Bellew tonight. And what gets me, and it's pretty annoying, they're talking about Usyk and Joshua. Joshua's got unfinished business with two other big boys who are going to be fighting soon. Wilder and Fury. Why are they trying to bring the smaller man up? Fight those guys first, or the winner of that guy, right? Fight Wilder or Fury. Then you can look at Usyk. Let Usyk acclimatise to a heavyweight division. But it seems to me that Matchroom are trying to find any opponent they can to move away from Deontay Wilder. or Tyson Fury. They're thinking about Povetkin, who they just beat, and now they're focusing on Pulev, who also beat Hughie Fury. No. You've got some big fish to fry still, Anthony Joshua. Think about it. I'm not saying Anthony Joshua is avoiding people, but there are money men behind Anthony Joshua that are thinking, maybe we should prolong this fight a little bit longer and look for a Usyk or a Pulev. No, you've unfinished business against real heavyweights, real guys. And those guys are Fury and Wilder. Whoever wins that fight, Joshua has to fight them at some stage, surely. Then if you beat a Deontay Wilder or a Tyson Fury, Usyk acclimatises well to the heavyweight division because we don't know whether he's Evander Holyfield yet. You know, when Ricky Hatton moved up to welterweight, it didn't go as well for him. Not everybody climbs the weight classes well. Not everyone's David Haye and Evander Holyfield. So you've got to consider these things. But if Usyk acclimatises to the heavyweight division well, then you've got a mega fight when if Anthony Joshua takes care of business against the other stars of the heavyweight division. That should be the main route, right? But they're looking for Usyk, apparently, these promoters. What happens if Anthony Joshua doesn't land that haymaker and he gets embarrassed by the smaller guy? The money will fall out of Anthony Joshua like, I don't know, a speed train that is leaking. Literally, right? It'll just crash or stop altogether, right? Fight the big boys, beat the big boys, then you fight the guy that could accumulate to being a good heavyweight, and you've also got a pound-for-pound star to deal with, right? You win that, by God, what a career then, you know? So that's my thoughts, just a short one really. Tony Bellew did box, he's shown his IQ in there, he's shown that he had a high level IQ. I actually think he didn't give himself enough credit in the post-fight interview when he said that's the difference between world-class and elite. An elite fighter could be beaten in 8 rounds by this guy, never mind just a world-class fighter. So Tony Bellew, he did himself proud to do what he did in the early exchanges because I didn't see that coming. But eventually, you know, knockouts count. And it will look real good down the line for Usyk, knowing that he come out as world champion and fought outside his comfort zone in the UK in the Lion's Den and was able to find a way to win. And that is the key. This guy was not fazed, maybe because he was so unfazed, he was sort of really asleep in the early rounds and didn't really get going until about the 5th or 6th. Then we saw the real Usyk. And that's basically how I saw it. I saw Tony Bellew slowing down just a little bit, and even so, even when he was still nicking around, you could still see Usyk was slowly getting into the equation, and it was all over from there, even though Bellew was still competitive. But Usyk, not fazed, that can leave him in good stead, but he has to understand that when he's fighting on foreign soil, he needs to be all with the tactics spot on and ready to fight from bell one, because he won't get any favours abroad. Tonight could have gone really wrong for him had he not found that knockout, had Bellew managed to win another round or so, and it gone the distance. But of course it is what it is. Usyk is the winner. We were the winner. I thought it was a good fight. It's a good fight for Usyk to carry on now in his career. It's a good way for Tony Bellew to go out and knock out, unfortunately. But this is Champions of Champions Boxing Talk. I'm out.